Hello, hello, everybody. For those of you that are tuning in who were here yesterday and now tuning in, welcome back. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, welcome. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Nicholas. I'm a data scientist at a company in the US called the Data Incubator, and we're working with World Quant University to bring you this data science course. So the first thing I want to do is just say hi to everyone. And I would love it if people could just in the chat window on the right say hello and shout out from what country they're watching this office hour right now. So what countries are represented? Hi, Suleiman. Hi, Harsha. Ifyani, how are you? Nasim, Joshua. Yasser says he's from Pakistan. Mugerwa says he's from Uganda. Nabil is from Yemen. We have Harsha from India. Namrata from India. Undegwa from Nigeria. Florin from Romania. Wonderful. India, we have Estonia represented. Ukraine, Ghana, excuse me. Rahim is watching from Turkey. And Eyüp is also watching from Turkey. Kato is in between the Netherlands and Uganda. We have Algeria. We have Russia. This is wonderful. I'm going to have to start. There's so many folks from Nigeria. I'll have to start learning Igbo so I can talk to everyone. Cameroon, Central Africa. Wonderful. Well, welcome, Samuel. Jansen's from Indonesia, where it's 3 in the morning. Well, good job, Jansen. You're staying up late to keep learning, and I love it. Nabil also says he's living in Turkey. Well, that's wonderful. If Yanni say Igbo is the key. All right, good. And Sajib is from Bangladesh. Wonderful. Well, welcome. I'm so glad that we're coming from all around the world to discuss data science. Mohammed says maybe we could make an algorithm to detect people's location. Yeah, maybe we could. Probably Google's doing it already. But anyways, so Florin is saying that he finished his first mini project. So that's congratulations. I'm really excited to hear that. Tell me, where are other people in the course right now? Have you started watching the videos? Have you started the mini project? Have you been working in the notebooks? Tell me, where are you in terms of your progress with the course? So Florin is saying that he's watched the first lesson. Udemga has said he's finished the intro video. Jansen's already started with the notebook. Wonderful. Mohammed's saying he's finished the first video and he's wondering whether it would be beneficial to stay through the office hours or come back another time. I say it's always a good idea to stick in the office hours. So stay put. Don't go anywhere. Nabil says he's finished the first 2 lectures and he's been working on Python in general. That's great. So a lot of that general knowledge you've been working on over the last 3 months will definitely help in this course. Arthur says he's on unit 1.4. Gebrit Nensei, excuse me if I mispronounce your name, says he's sorry they missed the last office hours, but happy to be here this time. Don't worry about it. These office hours are optional, so I'm here if you need me, and if not, don't worry about it. Sara says she's finished the iteration video. Wonderful. Conditionals and functionals. Wonderful. Great. Well, it seems like people are all just starting with the first unit. I'm really excited to hear that. Tell me, What have you liked about the course so far? Somebody by the name of Tech Artist says they've finished the first week's mini project. Well, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Nabil's mentioning a book that he used to start learning Python, and it's there in the chat if anyone wants to take a look for their own self-study. Mohammed says he wants to make a difference with data. I think that's wonderful. Ojukwu asks if there's going to be a certificate at the end of the course. Yes, if you pass all the requirements for the course, you will be issued a certificate. Florence saying this is not his first time with, or not their first time with Python. Excellent. Sara said she likes the explanations. Rahim says he really likes the flexibility. That's wonderful. And Sam is already finished the first 2 mini projects. That's great. And Suleiman says that he's interested in manipulating big data. Wonderful. All right, so let's start in with the questions. And Yvonne, I see your question. I'll get there in just 1 second. Yasir asks, or Yasir wonders, it's not clear how much is required to be done for the first week in terms of the number of lectures and mini projects. Well, I would say that everything that's on the site so far, you should try to work through it. Nitin asked if DevOps and data science meet somewhere. You know, the truth is that I'm not a specialist in DevOps. I'm sure there are points of contact, but I just can't answer that question. Let me think about it and do some research, and I'll come back in a subsequent office hours and ask you. All right. So I've been hearing some good things about the explanation so far. I see that people are in different points in their progress in the course. So my question is, what questions can I answer for you? These could be general data science questions, or they could be specific questions about things that we've seen in the course up till now, or things that you've read in our question forum. So let's see here. Yvonne asked if there are any books that I would recommend on algorithms. Let me find a few and I will paste them into the chat window. Give me 1 second. So here's a good one. If you're interested in algorithms and different ways of doing sorting and that sort of stuff, let me recommend this course by Runstone Academy. And let me add one more. Another book that I would recommend, and I'm going to send you a link, an Amazon link, so you might have to find the book elsewhere, is Cracking the Coding Interview. Make sure that link works. Yes, great. Okay, so let me catch up on the questions. Okay, so backing up on the questions, Joshua asks, will we be using TensorFlow or Keras in the second unit? The answer is yes, we'll be looking a little bit at TensorFlow and Keras, but we'll be focusing mostly on a Python library called scikit-learn. Degefa would love to hear about the certificate. Well, the certificate is if you pass all the requirements of the course, we send you a certificate. Florin asks whether data science uses neural networks. Absolutely, right? When you get into neural networks, you're talking about machine learning or deep learning, and that's definitely part of data science. And if you continue on to Unit 2, you'll definitely learn more about neural networks. Maxime asks how they can get a grade that is greater than 1. Well, I'm not so sure in Unit 1 whether it's possible, but in Unit 2, we sometimes create models, and then you create your own model. And if your model beats our model, you get a grade that's above 1. But I would say don't focus too much on getting above 1. Just worry about getting 0.9 or better, and then moving on, so that way you keep up momentum in the course. Tech Artists asks, do we share solutions to the mini projects? They say that they've completed some projects, but they're worried that their solutions are a little bit hacky. Well, we don't share the exact solutions to our mini projects, but Tech Artist, if you feel like things are a little bit hacky, you can either post in the forum or we can discuss it here during office hours. Jansen asked, why are the students of WQU not allowed to apply for WQU jobs? Because I don't work directly for WQU, I don't have an answer to that question. So I think it would be better to direct that directly towards World Quant University so that they can answer it. Nabil says that as a petroleum engineer and candidate to a master's degree in the same field, what do you advise me to focus on more? Well, the truth is, Nabil, is that I'm not a petroleum engineer. I mean, first of all, congratulations on having such a wonderful career and on working on your master's in the same field. My advice to you, I suppose, would be to talk to people who are more advanced in petroleum engineering and see if any of them use techniques like machine learning or Python programming in general in their work, and then decide how you can work towards the skills that they have. Otherwise, if you find that there are technical repetitive tasks that you're doing, like calculation tasks in your work, a lot of those could be sped up by using algorithms, right? Or just by using programming, using Python programming. So talk to people who are a little bit more senior in your field, and also think about where are the sort of friction points, the repetitive calculations that I'm doing over and over again that I could speed up by using my new programming skills. Yasir asks, in which case would you use an assert statement? An assert statement, let's start with the definition of an assert statement. So an assert statement, what you're doing is you're telling Python, check that the following condition is true. For example, if I have a list, right, and I need to put that list into a further process in my program, I might have a list of student names, and I need to make sure that there are 100 students in my list. And so I might go assert length of list equals 100. And if that condition is met, what happens in Python is nothing happens. It just keeps going. And if that condition isn't met, the program breaks and it throws an error. So it's saying, hey, you wanted me to check if there were 100 students in this list? Well, there aren't. So something is wrong. Something wrong is happening up above when you created the list. So sometimes in our curriculum, we use assert statements just to check that you're on the right track. So you might run a cell that has an assert statement in it and nothing will happen. That's a good thing, right? Otherwise, if it throws an error, that means, something is wrong earlier in the Python notebook, and you need to take a look at it. Michael says he's joining for the first time, but hasn't caught up on viewed any of the lectures yet, but he's going to catch up. Well, excellent. Michael, my advice is get to it, catch up. Can't wait. Sarah asks, if possible, could you please provide us with links to practice more and solve more challenging problems which are related to the units uploaded? My advice would be right now, if you feel like the units aren't as challenging, my advice would be to keep going through the course, right? Move through the course faster. That would be my advice. Otherwise, if you're interested in looking into coding challenges, a great a great website. Give me one second, guys. A great website is called HackerRank, where you can say that you're learning Python and it can give you sort of various daily challenges that you can work on. Joy says hi, that she missed out yesterday and that she's from Nigeria. Well, I'm really glad you're here now, Joy. Welcome. So Sebastian notice that in one of the videos, we say that we won't be talking a lot about recursion or recursive programming in the course, and whether I think that recursion is vital, especially when dealing with data. I definitely think that there are applications where programming recursively, or like sort of even doing dynamic programming, can be helpful. But for the purposes of this course, we're keeping it a little bit at a sort of higher global level. And then once people have those basic blocks in place, in the future, they can move on to recursion. So Samuel asks a question: what is the minimum data size for a successful data science project? Samuel, I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about what you think. What do you mean when you talk about size? Are we talking about the size of a file, the number of observations? Tell me a little bit more what you have in mind. So Florin said that he heard that grade 1 is the maximum. That is true. There are some cases, however, in some of the courses that we give, like in Unit 2, where you can actually beat the answer and you can get above 1. But again, don't worry so much about getting 1 or above. Just worry about getting over 0.9 and then moving on and keeping your momentum going. Joy asks a really interesting question. And in fact, it's something that I wanted to review with you guys a little bit later in the office hour. She asks whether you should create a new notebook when solving the mini projects, or you can just solve them right there. Well, the answer to that question is it's really up to you. I would advise that before you start a mini project, you create a copy of that notebook. So that way you have a clean copy there to work with, just in case something happens. And then you can solve it in the original version. But you can also just solve it right there. It really just is up to you what you feel most comfortable with. Gebretnasi said or notes that Python has limited performance compared to Java. How can we describe it? Thank you. Well, I actually don't know a lot about the performance differences between Python and Java, so I can't really speak to it. What I can say is that a lot of the tools that we use in data science are in the Python universe. And that's whether we're talking about libraries like Pandas, NumPy, SciPy, visualization pack programs like Seaborn, Matplotlib, um, Bokeh, and let's see here, machine learning libraries like scikit-learn. So while Java may have some advantages may have some sort of efficiency advantages to Python, Python has the advantage is that it has a big data science community in it. And so you have ready-made tools to do your data science work. But if you find out more about the differences between the languages, I would love to hear about it. Newton says he has a bit of Python experience and that he's finding this course fascinating. Well, I'm really glad to hear that, Newton. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Nassim asks if I've ever used R, and compared to Python, can he have my opinion? So I have used R, and I think R is fantastic. And one of the things that I really like about R is the community. There's a wonderful community of people who are trying to educate and spread the word about using R for data science. And I'm especially impressed by, there's a community called the Tidyverse community, and the head of that effort is a gentleman named Hadley Wickham. And so if you just Google Hadley Wickham, you'll find a lot of information about the books that he's published. For people who want to learn more R. And I'll paste that in. So I have used R and I do like it a lot. That being said, within data science, there's sort of within the industry of data science, right? The private sector, Python is much more prevalent. And the reason is because Python is a general purpose programming language that also happens to have a lot of data science tools, whereas R was created as a sort of statistical analysis programming language, and so it doesn't quite as easily play with other systems that are already in place in the business world. And so you'll see a lot of data science jobs will basically give you the option: do you want to use Python or R? But a lot more say we use Python. And a few will say we use R, you have to know R. But generally, Python is a more dominant language. So my advice would be start with Python. And then if you want to follow up with R, I think that's a great idea. So I have no bad words to say about R, but I would say start with Python. Arthur makes a great observation that there are more data science challenges that you can find on the website Kaggle. So I definitely think that's a great place to go. So Muhari says, hello from Morocco. Well, hello, hello. Yasir says that in the presence of efficient deep learning algorithms, if the data science will be in demand more. Well, I do think I can't predict the future, right? But I can forecast because I'm a data scientist. But I would say that there is an increasing number of companies and organizations that have access to a lot of data and they don't know how to analyze it or how to model it or how to use that data to leverage future either social efforts, government efforts, or business efforts. And so I do think that as everyone realizes that they have a lot more data and that they can use it for good things, data science as a field will keep growing and there'll be demand for data scientists. And so it's great that you all are taking this course. And I think you're doing the right thing by starting with the basics and then building up from there. Mogari is asking whether there's a certificate at the end of the course, and yes, there is a certificate at the end of the course as long as you pass. So Sam followed up to the question he asked earlier about how big does data need to be before it's a successful big data project. I would say that the answer there is pretty subjective. I'm going to give you kind of a lame answer. But I would say that if you're dealing with data files, where if you try to open them in like a traditional spreadsheet program, like Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Excel breaks, then that's a great data set to be using for your data science project. Another thing that I would say is when we're talking about number of observations, that's one thing. But maybe you're thinking mostly about structured data, like housing prices. This house is at this address and it costs this much. And it was last sold on this date. But there's a lot of data science that involves unstructured data. So like people's tweets, books, just large amounts of text from which you need to extract and organize information. And those data sets don't necessarily need to be huge. They're just unstructured, and your job as a data scientist is to bring structure to them, right? So when you're talking about structured data, yeah, something that's going to crash Excel, but also keep in mind that data science involves unstructured data too, and those data sets don't need to be enormous. Although, hey, bigger is always better when you're trying to impress people with your data science skills. Joshua asks, why aren't F strings used in notebooks as they're easier to read and implement? So Joshua, I actually agree with you. They are easier to read and implement. And the reason that they're not in this notebook is simply because when the notebooks were written, that option didn't exist. So you can absolutely use F strings. I'll type an example of an F string. Let's see here. So let's say I have something that's like number of observations equals 10. And then I would have something like print there are right? So if I have a variable and I call that variable number of observations or num underscore observations, and I set that equal to 10, I can then print using an F string, where it is I start with a lowercase f and then either a single inverted comma or double inverted commas, and I say there are, and then if I want to include that variable name, I'll put it inside curly braces, and then I would complete the rest of the string. And so what that would print out would be there are 10 in the data set. Right? So I can fill in those variables. Great point, Joshua. Thank you for bringing it up. Is there a restriction to write a 5 or 6 line paragraph? That's a question from Jalid. Jalid, could you explain a little bit more? Are you talking about writing code, or are you talking about writing like in general, like writing in English? So Florin says that they've explored a little bit about text processing in Python, but not sure whether it's covered in this course. I would say that it's covered more in depth in Unit 2. So it's something to look forward to. So Sara asks whether this course will introduce students to machine learning and how machine learning is related to data science. And We'll do a little bit of a preview of that, but the real machine learning deep dive will be in Unit 2 of the course, and that whole course is on machine learning. So Jalid wants to know if I can tell him about quants and high frequency trading people who work at hedge funds and hedge funds that hire quant and data science to develop algorithms. Well, I have to be honest that this is not my area of expertise. I've never worked in finance or as a quant in finance, but I can tell you that yes, if you hear a dog barking, I'm in a co-working space and somebody brought their dog to work and now it's barking. So don't worry, everything's fine. There are no dog attacks here. Okay, so what I would say, I honestly don't know, but people are always looking for ways to analyze the information that is sort of in the financial sector in order to get some sort of competitive edge in the buying and selling of assets. For example, I was at an event a couple weeks ago, and there was not a hedge fund, but a trading unit within a larger finance company. And we were talking about natural language processing and the ways in which they might be able to take the quarterly reports that businesses issue and from that help predict their performance over the next quarter. And not looking simply at the numbers, but just in the nature of the language they use, the way they describe the operation, whether that would somehow provide an insight beyond the numbers as to whether they'll do better or worse than their predictions for that quarter. Other than that, um, buying and selling algorithms. I mean, people write algorithms to predict whether a stock will go up or down in a given day based on historical performance. And then I'm sure there are a lot of quants who basically do just analysis work where they say, tell me about this particular stock or this particular sector. What are the features? What are things we should be looking for? What features within a given company or stock seem to drive price up and down and which don't? So those are some options or some of my ideas about how quants work in the financial industry. Magari notes that there are no libraries in R for deep learning. I will take your word for it. I'm not sure that's true, but I will defer to you on this. So Afah is is saying hello to us from Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome, welcome. Stanley and Elton seem like they're both in Zimbabwe. Elton asks, how do the certificates reach you? They'll reach you by email. Or actually, I'm not 100% sure whether you'll get them by email or whether you'll be able to download them from the same Jupyter Hub where we have all the materials for the course. Tech artists ask, will we learn the basics of computer vision in this course? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't believe so. Computer vision will be more for Unit 2, machine learning. Afa asks if they'll be automatically registered for Unit 2 after Unit 1. No, you'll need to register manually for Unit 2. Stanley asks, why Python and not R? There's a lot of like Python versus R in today's office hours. And I would use the same answer that I gave earlier, which is that both Python and R are great tools. Both have great communities for data science. Python tends to be more prevalent in terms of its use and number of people using it, especially in the private sector. And that's because Python, as a general use language, does a better job of sort of hooking into other aspects of a business. Yasir asks, mini projects are here, data course, Python, mini projects on server. If you want to find the mini projects, let me show you where they are. I'm going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. So this is the landing page for the course. And if I click on My Server, it will take me to this page, Data Course. And I'll select the Python folder. And from there, I'll select Mini Projects. And as you said, the mini projects are right here. And I'll come back to those in about 5 minutes. So I'm just going to leave the page like this. So Faith says hello, and she says it's a little late for class where she is in Kenya, and it's 11:30 p.m. Well, thank you, Faith, for staying up late to have class with us. Where I am, it's only 2:30 in the afternoon, so it's a little bit more civilized. But hopefully, note that different days have different office hours. So there'll be earlier office hours later in the week, so you don't need to stay up so late. Thomas asked if there's a limit on on the sort of if there are computational limits to the IPython notebooks, and then he tried some um, algorithm for determining prime numbers, and it took a long time. In terms of Python itself or IPython notebooks, I wouldn't say that there are exactly limits in terms of computation, but keep in mind that all of these notebooks are being given to you or provided to you on virtual machines. So there's a warehouse somewhere with a bunch of Linux machines, and you're accessing those Linux machines via your web browser and via the IPython notebook. So there is a limit to how much those machines can do. So if you're having trouble, you're probably hitting the limit of those virtual machines. So there's like smoke coming out of the stacks of the computer warehouse where they are. And so you might try to do something a little bit more, see if you can make it a little bit more efficient so that it would work. Mohammed asks, if I was able to start over before starting in data science field, would I do it? Well, actually, I started off in a completely different field in Spanish and Latin America and Latin American culture and literature, and I switched to data science. So if I could do it all over again, actually, I think I'd do it the exact same way. So I'm loving data science so far, and I'm glad I switched. And uh, if I could have started earlier, maybe I would have, or maybe I would have just let life happen, as it often does. Florin makes an excellent point, which is if you're looking for a book about Python at the bookstore, it's very important to let the bookstore person know that you're not interested in the snake, right? You want the programming language. So be careful, because otherwise you might have all these books about snakes. Tech artist, when should we register for Unit 2? I don't have an answer to that question. My advice would just be keep up to date on the emails that we're sending out and World Quant University is sending out. And you should, as soon as you see that it's open for business, you should sign up. For the mini project assignments, when should we do them? Well, you should do them according to the specifications that are in the curriculum. My advice is, actually, I can't remember how many we're doing. Let me get back to you. Let me type a question to one of my colleagues, and I'll get back to you. Okay, I've asked my colleagues if they answer back, I'll let you guys know. There we go. Nassim notes that for deep learning in R, you can use Keras or TensorFlow or H2O AI. So there is an API in R for using TensorFlow. So you should be fine if you want to use R and build your neural networks. Let's see here. So Sada asks, as a data scientist, do you need to have knowledge in that topic or field, which needs to be analyzed, or no need for that? I would say that it's very context dependent. The more specialized knowledge that you have about the domain that you're analyzing, the better your analysis is going to be. Oftentimes, when you are dealing with a field or an area that you don't know anything about, it's important to be paired or to work with a domain specialist, right? Someone who has knowledge of that domain. And so they can educate you about sort of what to look for and what's interesting. And then you can actually bring the sort of quantitative and an analysis piece. So I would say that moving forward in the course, just to follow up on Sarah's question, you're going to have some general tools that will be helpful for analyzing any data set. But one thing that you'll always need to do is you'll need to be thinking a little bit about the nature of that data itself. Michael asks, would he be able to register our name preferences for our certificates? That's a good question, and I don't know. Let me follow up and I will answer it at a later time. Let's see here. Effa asks if you can follow me on Twitter if you don't mind. Sure, I'm happy to have more followers on Twitter. You can follow me at NC Goodbody. I don't do a lot of tweeting these days, but I certainly do every once in a while. So Ibironke asks whether there are other forums for this unit. Excuse me, for this community, for this course community. So there are a few places where you can look. First, we have these office hours. And then second, we have the question forum. So that's a great place to connect with people in the community. And I'll copy and paste that into the chat window. We don't have like an official WhatsApp group. I know that sometimes in past iterations of the course, students set up their own WhatsApp group. So if you wanted to do that, you could post it in the question forum. Just keep in mind that that would be unofficial. So Florin asks whether business analytics is also data science. That's a good question. I suppose that there is a lot of overlap. And the difference would be that in business analytics, there's sort of established heuristics and ways of doing things that are native to that field. So maybe data science is a little bit broader. Data science is probably more focused on larger data sets and then also on machine learning, which you don't really hear a lot about in business analytics. But I would say that honestly, there's like a ton of overlap. And so I would imagine that you could find somebody who's a business analyst doing the same thing in one company as a person who's in another company who has the title data scientist. So Sebastian says that he's also trying to switch to data science and he's determined to get the best out of these two units. That's great and beyond. So that's fantastic. And that his major was originally civil engineering. Well, that's very cool. I'll be interested to hear about how your civil engineering background, or maybe how you can look at civil engineering problems using these new data science tools that you're acquiring. So Mehmet wants to know whether this course has a general introduction to data science concepts or project implementations, or is it more of a hands-on experience? Well, this is definitely much more of a hands-on course, right? We learn by doing, and that's why the mini projects are so important for us. Yasir asks if I can explain a list comprehension in Python. I will do that. Give me 1 second. I'll do it at the end of the office hour. How often, let's see here, Mohammed asks, how often data scientists come from a mechanical engineering background? As the most likely academic prerequisite states for computer science, I have to be honest, I think that right now, since the field is new, data scientists come from all sorts of different backgrounds. So yeah, there are a lot of computer science people, but there are also a lot of statistics people, and there are a lot of engineering people. I've met a ton of physicists, yeah, like theoretical physicists. So I think that there are lots of routes into data science. Sebastian says that I'm going to get 1,000 followers tonight. Well, fantastic. Maybe I can start, maybe I'll become like a celebrity, an internet celebrity. Emmanuel says that he's still getting an error running the grader. If you haven't already, could you please post about that in the forum? Are we going to learn, Stanley wants to know if we're going to learn anything about data privacy. I don't think we're going to talk specifically about data privacy. Right now, it's more about getting the basics of the programming into place before we talk about those larger issues. Can I have a picture with you? Well, I don't know about that. All right. Afeh wants to know whether I'm using any special software. No, I'm really not. It's just my computer and this microphone. And I plugged my computer directly into the router, so I'm not using Wi-Fi. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I just got an answer back from my colleague. The first question was whether you can apply now for the Unit 2. And we do rolling admission, so you can apply at any time. So go ahead and apply away. And then the second question was whether, let's see here. So in order to get a certificate, you need to get better than 0 for all of the questions and all of the mini projects. And then if you want a certificate that says you've completed the course with honor or distinction, you need to get 0.9 or better. So if you just want to get through the course and get the certificate, you need to answer something for all of the questions in the mini projects. And if you want distinction, you need to get 0.9 or better as your average across all of them. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. We have about 10 minutes left, and I want to go over two things, list comprehensions, and then also, but first, a little bit of a question that I've seen in the forums. Okay. So there's a question here that was recently asked where somebody deleted some parts of one of the mini projects or one of the exercises, and they want to know how they can get a fresh copy so that they don't lose any of the original content. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And actually, Joy mentioned this earlier, so let's take a look. So the first thing is, I'm here in the folder with the different mini projects. And there are a few ways to work with Jupyter Notebooks to make sure that you don't get in a situation where you've deleted content that you actually want to still have access to. The first thing you could do is you could select one or all of these. I'm going to select just the first one. Let me make the type a little bit bigger. And then you can click on the duplicate button. And so now I have 2 copies of the IN mini project, and I can work in one and keep a clean copy just in case. So that's one option, creating a copy. Here's another option. Up here in the right corner, there's a drop-down menu that says New, and I'm going to select New Terminal. Now what's going to open up is a terminal window, and if you've ever used Ubuntu or Linux or Unix or the terminal in a Mac, this might look familiar to you. So one thing that you can do is, well, the first thing is I'm going to change my directory. So I'm going to go, if I type in pwd, that'll tell me my present working directory. So it says I'm in the home folder. And if I do cd data course, that's change directory to data course, you can see that it's reflected here up at the top. It says you're in the data course folder. And if I type in present working directory again, it'll say, okay, here, you're at home in the data course folder. Once I'm in the data course folder, I can type the following command. /update modules, update_modules.sh. And then I would have a space, and then here I'm going to put Python. For the Python folder, if I go to data course, I see that there are 2 folders, Python and data wrangling. Let's say I want to replace or I want a fresh copy of the Python folder. So I'll do Python. So I'll hit enter, and then a bunch of text will appear on my screen, like I'm doing some fancy hacking or something. And if I go back to the file browser here, I can see that there's a new folder that's also called Python, but it has a .new extension on it. And if I open it, I have everything that was in that folder originally in its original form, including the mini projects. So this is a good way to, if you completely mess up one of these folders or one of the notebooks in this folder, you can always get a new one by doing this update modules trick. So again, you would make sure, hold on one second, you would make sure that you're in the data course folder, and then you would type /updatemodules.sh space, and then the name of the folder you want a new copy of. I'm going to close that. So the first option then is to create a copy before you start. The second option is to use update modules. And then the third option is you can also use Git. Now, for those of you that have never used Git before, don't worry about it. This is not something that you need to learn. It's not a requirement for this course. It might be generally useful as you become more and more of a data scientist, but for now, just focus on Python. So for example, if I'm in CD, so I'm going to change from CD data course, and then I'm going to go CD Python, CD mini projects. Good. And so if I go to present working directory, I'm now in this folder. I'm in the data course Python mini projects folder. And if I type in ls for list, you can see here are the 3 Python notebooks. So one thing that I could do is I could use Git from the command line. And then I would say git add asterisk as a wildcard and IPYNB. And if I go to git status, I've added 3 files to my Git repository. And so I can then just go git commit message first commit. And all this means, we'll not go over all the details here about the Git global and Git configuration, but all this means is that you can create a Git repository on your virtual machine. And so that way, if you mess something up and you want to roll back to a previous commit, you can do it that way. Now, granted, that final option presupposes that you have experience with Git. And if you don't worry about it. It's not a problem. There's still 2 other ways to deal with messing up your notebooks. You can either use the, get the new unit command, or you can just make a copy before you start. So Magri asks if I can answer the question for the assignment mini projects. When should we do them? You need to finish all of them by the end of the course. Mohammed asks, is it allowable to capture the office hour videos? Remember that these will be on YouTube, so you can always look for them there. Avishek asks how to lecture notes. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Avishek. Could you give me a follow-up, like a clarification? In the meantime, I'm going to do a quick list comprehension. Let me share my screen again. I'm just going to create a new Python notebook. And I'm going to create a variable called myList. And I'm going to put 4 integers in here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if I wanted to do something to every item in this list, there are a few ways that I could do it. The first way I could do it is I could use a for loop. So I would go, well, for example, I would say new list, and then I would make an empty list, and then I would go for item in my list. So that'd be for every item in my list, 1, 2, 3, 4, do the following. So I hit colon and enter. Now it's indented. We're inside the for loop. And I would go new list dot append, open parentheses, close parentheses, item, let's say squared. So what I'm saying is go through every item in this list and then raise it to the second power or square it. And then add that new number you get to the list, new list. And so you can see I go from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1, 4, 9, and 16. Now that's fine, but this is a little bit cumbersome. And one way you can write this quicker is by using a list comprehension. And the way you would do that is with the following syntax. So you have open square brackets, close square brackets, and then you have the operation that you want to do. In this case, it's item squared, right? So I would do item squared. Then I would use for item. So here we have for item, and it's just the same as the for item here in this loop. In my list. So for item in my list is repeated here, but instead of having all of this other lines, I just add this little operation at the beginning. And if I hit enter, you see that I get the same result. So a list comprehension is just an easy way to quickly move through the items in a list or any of the other iterable. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me during office hours. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, remember that our next office hours will be tomorrow at, let's see here, noon New York time. I don't know where it will be for you for your time, but just keep in mind we'll be here tomorrow. And until then, I wish you happy coding and happy data scientisting, and I will see you all later. Take care. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are.